So guys, can we have a round of applause for Ben Stickland of Alliance Software? Thank you. Thank you very much. Cheers, Ben.
Just so I can get a bit of a sense for who's in the room, show of hands if you are you do not yet run your own business, but you are thinking about doing that. Show of hands if you derive your primary income from a business that you own. That is a good room. I think this will work well. So I've titled my presentation tonight, How to Avoid Divorce, 3 Horrible Years, 300K of Debt on a Failed Business, because I've had, not the divorce side of things, but I've had some quite painful experiences and I've walked closely with people who've done that. I've also had times when I've looked in the bank account and said, wow, there's lots of money in there, how did it all get there? And so I've sort of experienced both sides of that equation, and hopefully there's a few tips in here that might be a little bit useful. Business is great, and when business works well, it is great. I have a lot of friends in business, and apart from tradespeople, my experience has been that it's rarely okay. It's rarely middle of the road. Most of the time, it's either really good or it really sucks. Like it's the extremes of those ends of emotion. From a good side, the income, if you own your own business and succeed, you will make more money than a wage earner. You're not capped by your capacity to sell time, and you can make more money. You also have flexibility. I will spend a reasonable number of weeks next year in other countries doing other things that are interesting, and that's a flexibility that I get. It's not true that you have full flexibility. I'm tied to some degree to Melbourne. All of my employees could leave Melbourne and go to other countries. If I did that, I think my business in time would actually would suffer. So there's not incredible flexibility, although some business owners do get that as well. And autonomy, just the capacity to direct your own time and to make your own decisions. From a failure perspective though, it is also horrible. There is a lot of risk, and we talk about risk as though it's this thing that's just amorphous and doesn't mean anything. When businesses go bad, it can go really bad. I have walked very closely with people who've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars that they spent a decade accruing, and have family members that think of them like it's been horrible for their marriages. I've seen it put pressure on them in ways that that it's just not fun. The pressure and collateral damage. So it's not just sometimes losing money, it can be actually some of the pressure that can come into people's worlds. And having personally lost hundreds of thousands of dollars on startups that didn't work, I kind of know that pain and have had those hard conversations with my wife. And so the answer is, I want you to be smart. I see people get into business and actually I don't know, I've had people say, I'm just gonna make it happen. I'm gonna push. And that just make it happen spirit actually is really stupid. Like there is a lot of analysis that you can do before you go into a business, and my hope tonight is just to show you some very basic analysis that you can do that will increase your odds of success dramatically. Like you can put the odds in your favor rather than being against you or out of your favor. So, a little bit of background. I have been involved in 3 businesses, and we're just considering the starting of a 4th. Alliance Software, actually I'll tell Alliance Software last. Noble Samurai is a business that I think we've had 80,000 customers pay us for something. It's an online venture. We got to the top 5 tools in the world for SEO, and we then saw the SEO online market crumble, and we lost money for a number of years in a row. We've rebuilt that business. We're now just hitting cash flow positive again. We have an online video platform that we have just around the 2,000 subscribers paying us $30 to $50 a month to use our platform. So in terms of that business, that is a pure tech startup play, and I've lived the excitement and the pain of seeing that go well. Web TV, we were able to successfully sell that out to a publicly listed company out of Perth. At our height, I think we were an in-house TV service for the aged care industry, and I think we had at our height we got to 10,000 rooms in terms of access to 10,000 rooms, and it was nice to be able to build a business and get to the point of selling that. And Alliance Software is, from a tech startup perspective, an incredibly boring business. It is constrained by people. We sell time just like an accounting firm does. The cool thing about Alliance is I get to work with like dozens and dozens of software engineers, which means when I have a good idea, I've got people I can pull in and use for good ideas. The other thing that's been really interesting in Alliance is because we've lived in the tech startup land, we've got a disproportionately high number of clients in the tech startup space. And so a lot of the stories that I tell tonight, I will anonymise, but they're of either of my financial loss or of clients that I've worked really closely with who've done really, and some of them, don't get me wrong, tech startups when they work are amazing. I have one client, I came this close to talking her out of the idea. It was like I felt like I was taking money from someone that shouldn't give me money. I felt bad about taking money off this person to build this initial site. I kind of gave her all the reasons why it wasn't going to work. And I look back now, she has 3 staff and works not crazy hours and would be easily making 300 grand above her income per year out of this business, and has the ultimate lifestyle business. And it's a what I call a Goldilocks tech startup, and I'll talk about what that means later in the presentation. So it can be amazing, but I've worked with a close friend, and he spent $400,000 with us, plus a lot of money of his own, bet his mortgage on a business, and I remember the day we turned the server off. And it was a hard day. And so I've seen kind of both sides of that equation. Anyway, that's me, that's my background. So kind of the question that I want to challenge you with, and I suppose I'm coming from a presupposition where I've seen people launch tech startups without being smart. They just haven't, they've just been lazy, or they've been arrogant. They've said, I know my market well, this is going to work, and they've just lost lots of money. Is how much time would you invest to dramatically increase the odds of your business success? So I made up this graph. This is not statistically, there is no report, there is no analysis behind this. This is just what I actually think is true. I think that a lot of people, if they would do 1 week of good research, they would move their odds of success from 20%, which is in general business about the success rate of new businesses, which is about 20%. In tech startups, it's between 5 and 10%, so it's like most people fail. If they did 1 week of work, they could move it to 20. They could move it from 20 to 40%. If they did a month of research, they could move it to 50%. If they did 3 months, they could move it to 70%. It's not just doing the research; it's having the humility to listen to your market and actually hear what they have to say. Again, I have no statistics. Don't come and ask me for something to back this up. This is just my personal view of the world. Cool. So what I want to do is, and I've just realised that there's probably a strong bent towards tech startups, so I'm going to try and focus a little bit more on that. But I think there are actually 4 different business opportunities that most people are going to pick between. And they have good and they have bad. And I just want to take a little while and walk through those and think about some of those models and what they might look like for you. So, the first thing is a normal business. This is starting another business in a well-defined field. So you're an accounting firm or a furniture shop or a car sales yard or whatever. This is a normal business. This is an option. You can just go and start a normal business. I remember when I was about 20 years old, a guy who was a bit older than me said, because I would come up with a new business idea every week, like just crazy, stupid ideas all the time. And he said to me, Ben, a lot of people do very well and make very good money running very normal businesses. And so a normal business is certainly on the cards. Let me give you some pros and some cons. The advantages are it can leverage your existing skills. And customers understand what you're offering. Don't underestimate this. We had a product in the aged care space that was a unique platform for publishing content onto the TVs of aged care residents. When we had, I think, like maybe every second, like we had a large number of customers, and our attrition rate was almost 0. Once clients got it in, they loved it. But because it was weird, it was really hard to sell. Because it wasn't like we were replacing X with Y. It was like we created this, we actually invented a thing. And I never thought it when I went into a business, but it was really annoying. It was like, I just remember the frustration of going, it ticks me off that I have to actually get in front of somebody and educate them to what the hell this thing actually does before I can get them to consider whether or not to buy it. And that was our greatest constraint. It's nice to be able to compete against a market and go, we are this, and customers get it, and then you just go, well, we're this, but our reason for buying is Y. Some cons. These are hardest at the start. Every business, in fact, I think is hardest at the start. My observation, and I have a lot of good friends who run businesses, is it's typically 3 years. 3 years is generally I use this analogy of walking up a seesaw. You spend 3 years walking up the seesaw, and then one day you're doing the same thing. You're actually just still walking, but it just feels like it just gets easier because all the background work you've done of building contacts and building net systems and building this and building that, they all still exist, and all of a sudden one day the momentum tips over and you keep walking and you're going, oh crap, I'm making money for the first time, and it's not hard to find employees, and it's not hard to find this, and it's not, and that kind of walking down the other side of the seesaw, and so all the business owners that I know, and I know a lot of them, would generally tell a story of it being hard for the first 2 to 3 years. In my experience, I came from a very academic family, and I performed academically very well. I was at the top of my university class, both in my 2 undergraduate degrees and in my postgraduate degree. And it sucked being in a position where the people that you went through university with were racing up the corporate careers of the big consulting firms, and you're making 25 grand a year and living off your wife's income, trying to get this damn business to work and feeling like a loser. So in every business, I would say to you, brace yourself for the first little while, because it can be tough to start off. And typically you need capital to establish it, depending on the nature of the business, and most people don't take a lot of income for the first few years. So how to be smart, and I reckon you can do this in about a month. One is keep your overheads low. When you start a business, we have been so fortunate to have low overhead businesses. So we rent in a space above a Barbecues Galore store. And after a little while, when we got some money, we spent a bunch of money to deck it out, and it's really cool and funky inside. But the rent is actually low, and I love the low rent because it's allowed me to experiment. It's allowed me to try things and actually lose some money. Like, I'll tell you a story when we lost a couple $100 grand on a project in a minute. And because my overheads didn't eat me, I didn't go and rent an expensive office up front. Secondly, this is just, every business owner should be able to answer this question. If you can't answer this question, you can't play. Who is my customer? How will they discover me? And why will they buy from me? Why will they switch? If you haven't got those 3 answers, you're not in the game. And in a standard business, there are 3 skills you've got to have. You've got to be able to sell. And I met a lot of professionals who are actually afraid of selling. I don't know any successful business people who can't sell. And so if that terrifies you, there is one option I'll give you tonight, but maybe you could run an oil mining company because you just turn oil on and people buy oil from you. It's a commodity. But unless you're in the commodity space, generally speaking, you've got to sell stuff. I got a cousin who was the CEO of an oil company. You've got to understand operations and you've got to understand finance. They're the 3 things you've got to be able to do. And I'm going to give you some books in a minute. I'm going to give you one book on each of those topics that I think is the best book to read on each of those topics. Here they are. So Ready, Fire, Aim is a great book on business in general, but it's got a lot of really good marketing smarts in it. It's probably one of the best business books I've read. Traction is an operations book. Traction is a book that I read coming up 3 years ago now whilst I was spending a couple of months in the US. And I came back and we've almost followed it religiously. We've just said to our group, we are going to read everything. Thank you. We're going to do everything in this book. And Straight Talk, Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits is the best finance book for non-accountants that I can recommend. Second opportunity, and I've never done this, so I'm going to just go through this briefly, but buy a franchise. They've got a little bit of bad press lately, if you've been following the press, but there are some benefits to buying a franchise. So this is buying an ability to use an existing brand, system, and etc. So McDonald's is the classic, but there's franchises for everything, and Australians love the franchise. Some of the pros, high success rate, much higher than standard businesses, and it can suit the inexperienced. A lot of the times these are really good for that they cater to your inexperience. Some of the cons, sometimes people work in franchises and their definition of success is that you have replaced your income. It sucks to be a business owner and just replace your income. Like I'd just much rather be an employee. I just don't want the stress. So unless you're going to make a lot more money than you do as an employee, in my humble opinion, don't bother. Like do something else. Just be an employee. Being an employee is not bad. And they're restrictive. And when I say restrictive, I feel like a lot of franchises, you kind of half own the business. You can't do certain marketing, you can't do there's a whole bunch of restrictions in owning a franchise, which are there for your protection, but they also can be restrictive. So here are some tips. I know of a lot of franchises where people buy them and sadly discover 2 months later that in the aftermarket, if they went to a business broker, they could buy pretty much exactly the same franchise for half the money. I would always look on the aftermarket for a franchise. If I was going to buy a franchise, just go and look at the aftermarket. Secondly, speak with current franchisees. Just go and interview them, knock on their door, talk to them. Don't. If I was buying a franchise, I would always speak to current franchisees. I would see actual trading numbers. Some franchises, and I can't believe this, but they're sold on nominal numbers or suggested numbers. And if you're buying an existing store, they say we can't give you their real numbers, but we'll give you, nominal numbers. It's crap. If you're going to buy a business that exists, you either see the numbers or you don't buy the business. And location is still critical. Some people think that the franchise is magic. Even within a franchise network, often location is still going to be the driving success of an individual franchise. Google search. This is just a good Google search. Things I wish I knew before I bought a franchise. That's a great Google search. You'll find some really good articles if you do that Google search. In fact, that's like a good Google search for life. Sorry, do you want me to go back? You got it? Things I wish I knew before I ... This one here is, in my opinion, the most underestimated business opportunity. If I was starting a new business today, this is what I would do. Actually, no, I'm going to start a new tech business, but I really think seriously about this one. So, some of the pros and cons of taking over existing businesses. Pros? Existing businesses, in my opinion, are the most, I can't think of the name, but the share market is a market that is a fair market. Like, there's lots of buyers, lots of sellers, the prices are well established. You buy real estate, there's not as many buyers, not as many sellers, the market is more manipulable, there's a bigger range for what an actual piece of real estate will sell for. You look at businesses, the same business on any given day will sell for a massive variation in price. So the capacity to get a good deal in buying an existing business, I think, is crazy. And secondly, I think the risk is actually a lot lower. Businesses fail. If you could buy an existing business that was run by some guy who's tired, guy or girl in their 60s, 70s, wanting to get out of the space, but it's been running at a 15-20% net profit for 5 years in a row, and the revenue hasn't changed much because they've got ongoing deals and blah, 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 and there are businesses like that around, and all you've got to do is turn up with a pulse. I think there's actually a lot of opportunity. And if you look at the demographics of baby boomers that are aging, I think it's crazy not to think about buying an existing business. I think it's genuinely, I would strongly consider this if I had nothing on my plate. The cons are it requires personal or investor capital. If you don't have a chunk of money, you may need some investors to back you. And people will say that you often got to establish a network amongst brokers and then kind of wait it out, to wait for the right opportunity to look for it. You need pretty good financial skills as well, which is not hard to get. Read the book I just recommended, but you need to be able to read financials well to be able to assess businesses like this quickly. And often the best businesses in this space, like I've heard of businesses, I heard of one business where the owner had died a year and a half ago. It was very sad. The wife had kept it going. The foreman was running it. They were making some niche particular chair for an industry. The foreman was just genuinely of well below average intelligence. It was like running on autopilot at a high profit because they just had found a niche that worked. I've heard of this in businesses where they put the screw tops on big pipes, and that's their whole business. But it's like a $5 million business, and they put screw tops on big pipes for mining companies, and they make a 25% net profit, and the guy needs to get out, and you'll sell it for 2 to 3 times multiples. There are incredible deals in this space. So, how to be smart in this space. There is a book called the HBR, Harvard Business Review, Guide to Buying a Small Business. Interestingly, this is, I think, one of the most popular courses you can do at Harvard, the Harvard University. And the authors of this define a small business as a $5 to $20 million enterprise. So they're not mucking around when they talk a small business. I've listened to these guys, I've got the book, I've looked at bits and pieces of it. It is a start to finish guide on how to buy a business, get investors to back you, do the whole thing. It's actually, I think, quite a low risk option for people to think about, and I would encourage you to think about that. The other thing is just no fixer-uppers. Don't go, if you're looking at businesses, don't go and buy a business that's great if someone could just get in and turn it around. Just buy a business that's already making a great profit for a 2 to 4 times profit multiple, and you're kind of safe. Email Samurai. So this is, we're going to talk about tech businesses in a second, just to give you a little bit of background. We built a product called Market Samurai, and it had incredible success. We had launched it, and you know, we had tens of thousands of customers, and we were convinced we were technical gods who could do anything. And we had this big list of email providers, and we hated all the email software because they kept doing all this nasty stuff to us. And we knew our sites were built in WordPress and everyone else's was, and integration with WordPress was a mongrel. And we knew that if we just built something great in that space that did really good, intelligent, integrated marketing inside WordPress and handled big lists and didn't fine me for everything stupid, and it was going to be great. And so we just said, we're going to eat our own dog food. We're going to build this product. It's going to be amazing. And we did, and we took it to one customer and another and another. And after we took it to 12, and they all yawned at us and said, we don't have a big list. That integration into WordPress, that's what we pay web developers for. They're cheap. Why do we care? And it's not just a big problem, and blah, 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 blah. And we threw the product in the bin. And it was a very painful experience to come home to your wife and say, you know that thing that was going to be awesome that we spent all that money on? Yeah, it didn't work out. And so we went through that process, and what we did find was that when we started doing those customer interviews, there was a couple of things in there that people really liked. We had this tool that helped people write copy, and they said, oh, that bit's pretty cool. And so we came across a book, and I think it's coming in the slides, but I'll name the book. The book is called Running Lean. And Running Lean is a script that basically is like the idiot's guide to starting a tech business. And it's literally just, here is a set of interviews. Go and ring your customers and ask them these questions. Now ring them and ask them these questions. And we started following through this thing. And we've done like, we'd be at least 100 interviews now. But when we started out in the business, we literally, after having the pain of losing all that money, we went through this process, and the second business did a lot better. To the point where I didn't want to spend that kind of money again. And so we did all these interviews to confirm people would like it, and they looked really good, but I was still nervous, and I'd learned to be humble. And so what we did is we said, okay, we're going to sell it before we build it. And so we put up pages, and we made these videos that pretended that the product existed. And we sent traffic to these things, and we asked people to buy a thing that didn't exist. And then when they got to the page that said, do you want to actually buy it? We said, it doesn't exist, but thanks for getting here, and when it comes, we'll give it to you for free. And we got no blowback. But we discovered that people were going to buy it. I knew that I'd interviewed like individual humans who liked it and gave us feedback on features and whatever else. But I'd also sold it at a good conversion rate to the market. I kind of knew I could sell it. I knew individuals liked it, and it gave me the courage of my convictions to go after it. So, starting a startup. This is when you've got a great idea for a new product or service. Let me give you a few ideas around this, and we'll wrap it up. Some of the pros, you can have incredible potential to scale. So our product, our online, it's now called Click Video, our online content video platform, it turns written content into videos almost instantly. It costs, people spend between $30 and $50 US a month to access it. It probably costs me 5 cents a month to add a new customer to that. Like if a customer comes and buys, that actually the actual infrastructure costs are maybe slightly above that, but just trivial. But you've got this huge capacity of overheads that actually have to exist before you can sell to one customer, and then beyond that, it's very scalable. The cons are that tech startups have really high failure rates. They are often trying to change the world in some way, and the failure rate in tech startups is, depending on what stats you read, 90 or 95%. And generally, you're going to require capital and or technical skill to get going. So a few ways to be smart. This is the book. Read the book. Just go and read the book. It'll take you 2 hours. Like, just do what the book says. One of the things that the book does, which I think is brilliant, thank you, which I think is brilliant, is they talk in the book about what's called a problem and a solution interview. I've seen clients where they've come in with a great idea, and I've desperately tried to convince them to go and talk to their market. And they come back to you and they go, oh yeah, I talked to my market. And what they actually did is they went to 5 people that already liked them and said, I've got this great idea. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. Do you like it? And those people didn't want to hurt their feelings, and so the feedback they got was just rubbish. What the problem interview does is it forces you to not show anything. It forces you to literally go to a group of people and just classify and prioritize the problem. Just get a real sense for what is causing pain. If there is not pain in the market, it's really hard to sell to. I know that because I spent a lot of time selling an in-house TV system that was great when people had it, but there was no perceived pain before the purchase, and I won't do that again. So anyway, I digress. So the book is running lean. The problem versus solution interview is really important. Just some other tips that can be useful. If you are doing anything that's geographically bounded, I would always look for geographic solutions in other markets. Dick Smith, who's had a lot of success as a businessman, basically said he had no creative ideas at all. Like Dick Smith Electronics was just Circuit City copied into Australia. Australian National Geographic was just National Geographic copied into Australia. Like he literally just said, I didn't come up with any ideas. He said, I just looked around the world at what was working and just took it to Australia. Goldilocks-sized businesses. My observation has been in the tech startup space, people have done well with Goldilocks-sized businesses. So you want to solve a problem that's big enough to make some real money from. But there are some businesses, when somebody comes to me and says, I'm going to set up an event platform that anyone in the world can use to set up their own events and tell their friends about it and they can all share it, and it's like, okay, so that's a global business and you're competing directly with Facebook. And that's okay. That's not to say that it can't be done, but you're trying to change the behaviour of the whole world. I've got other clients who work in a niche like aged care in Australia. I can tell you, because I know that niche, there's only, I think, 3,500 facilities and 7,000 retirement villages. It's big enough to make money from, that's a serious enterprise, but if you have a killer offering in that space, it's a Goldilocks-sized business. It's small enough that Microsoft is not building a specialist product. But it's big enough that you can make millions of dollars. So just think about that. I've seen good success in Goldilocks-sized niches. 2 hard-earned lessons and I'll wrap it up. Lesson 1, just get out of the building. As I said before, run problem and solution interviews. Getting out of the building, that's a common tech startup phrase. It means go and talk to people. Don't just say, I've got a great idea, I know my market, and I'm going to be determined. That little phrase is highly correlated to losing lots of money. I've seen it just from my experience, just my observation. I've got a great idea, I'm going to work really hard and be determined. Just get out of the building. Literally going and talking to 5 customers with problem solution interviews, it will, in most cases, change your idea. Let me just go back. Yeah, no, that's cool. Run low-cost experiments. I love running experiments. I will try anything if I can try it for under $5,000. If I can try a marketing idea, or I can try any endeavour, it's like, let's try paid spots in Instagram. Okay, it's under $5,000, great, let's try it out. I want to show you how to spend money well. So this is how I see a lot of people spend their money in a tech startup environment. They consciously spend their money over time, and they get to a moment of truth, and they get one opportunity to be right or to be wrong. I think most people are wrong most of the time. And the way you want to spend money is to get lots of moments of truth. I spent some money, didn't really look like it. I'll spend a little bit more, I'll try something, I spent a bit more, it didn't quite work, I spent a little bit more. Actually, I hit a moment of truth. I've got enough market validation that it is now worth spending the money, and I'll pile the money on. I will spend at speed because I've done the background work to get the validation. So smart spending. Just some ideas for low-cost experiments. Demonstrate mock-ups and prototypes. I can think of 2 sisters that we've worked with in our software firm who have a great business in the tech startup in the childcare space. And they came to me and were like, they were well recommended. So they came to me that whoever sent them to me had pumped up our tyres. They'd had really crappy experience with their previous developers, and they were just desperate to give me the check. It was like all the ethics in the world for me to say to them, could we just test this market first? Because they were like, oh, this is going to be great. Let me just give you the money. And as someone who likes taking money for services, that's okay. I was so tempted, it was insane. I said to them, can we please just spend a few $1,000, draw some pictures, do some interviews? They came back, the idea is complete crap. 2 weeks later, we've figured out a new way, we're going to do this. We're just going to go for it. Can we please spend a little bit of time? And by the second time, they were happy to do it. The second idea was crap. The third idea turned out to have a lot of traction, and they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars now, and they are just at the point now where they're about to become cash flow positive. So they're just starting to nicely get traction in the market. And I suspect that their business, I don't know, they should sell it for at least $5 million. Like it's got good traction in the market. It solves a genuine problem, but they had to go through a few rounds to kind of get there. Secondly, test marketing. That's what we did before. Selling it before you've built it. There's nothing. It gives you confidence. Like if you know you can sell something before you've built it, you've kind of validated the biggest assumption that you can get someone to part with money. There's nothing like asking someone for money to stop people being nice to you. I think it's a killer because people feel sorry for people starting businesses because they know all the pain you're going to go through, and so they want to say that your idea is great. And so you just say to them, great, would you love to be a foundation investor for, it's going to be $20,000 a year to use this product. For only $1,000 a year, I'll give you the first 3 years of membership. I just want to know that you're serious. People who loved your idea will not part with 1/20th of the value to actually buy it. Like, you can get them all to part with the money. That's a really strong indicator. And build minimum viable products. Build small things. Build half-assed products that you're not proud of. Do the small thing, get it to the market, have high customer churn, but know that at least get real market feedback. I know in our video product, the things that I thought were critical, we're now years down the track with really high, our retention's gone from crap to really good, and the things that I thought were critical that I'd be embarrassed not to launch with still haven't been built. But we got something really basic into the market, and our customer feedback, and every time someone left us, we got to figure out what they didn't like and what really drove their decision making. But for a long time, I wouldn't give accounts to family and friends because it was like, we've built this thing and it serves this niche market, but you're going to look at it and think it looks a bit crap and whatever else. But we were in the market, we were getting real feedback, not pretend feedback. And a great way to do this, and this is pretty much finishing it up, I've seen a concierge service is a concept I'd encourage you to think about. So the classic concierge service is you're going to build a platform to help people order food from the supermarket in line with their dietary requirements and what they've got in the cupboard. And all they have to do is take a photo of their cupboard once a week, and artificial intelligence is going to suck out all the things they've got, and you're going to, and your plan is to have this huge logistics warehouse with machines moving stuff around and doing all this stuff so that you can be really slick on the food delivery side. The concierge version of it would be put up a website, send me a photograph, a human's going to figure out what you want, a human's going to walk into Coles and buy it for you, and we're going to lose $100 on every order we ship out the door, and we're going to do that for the first 500 orders, but we're going to figure out what people actually want and how this whole thing works before we invest in the warehouse and we invest in the artificial intelligence and we invest in the blah, 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 blah. That's a concierge service. And I think we're done. That's my email, and thank you very much for listening. Appreciate your time.